Yeah, well, it's 20 years since we had the honour of hosting Her Majesty the Queen, and for me it started with her, I suppose, the royal party, what I would call a recce team coming to Burnham. And
many months out.
Yeah, that's right, and talking through what we thought might be a programme. Because we were delighted because I'm sure you're aware, but she'd been to Burnham in 1954.
That's right.
And I was just reading about it the other day, and that tour was right at the beginning of her reign, and she was the first monarch ever to step onto New Zealand soil, which is quite interesting, given our long history and emanating from the Treaty Waitangi. But also the fact that she was coming to Burnham, I think, was intentional, because she'd been there before.
That's right.
And I was looking at the photographs, and in that particular visit she had reviewed the Canterbury Regiment, because as you know, Burnham Camp in those days would have been very different to the camp that we were in, because the units of 2nd, 1st wasn't even around in those days, or the logistics battalion. And the band was there as well, the Canterbury band. But of course it was great because in terms of the background to this, we were able to describe the fact that we were right in the middle of operations, as you remember.
And we were, I think it was BAT 6, wasn't it?
Yeah, BAT 6 were getting ready to go to East Timor, as they called it then. It was now Timor-Leste. And BAT 5 were already deployed, and actually they were both going, they both sort of did their training, and the families were still in Burnham Camp. That's so it was really important. This was just such a morale boost, if you remember. So just going back to you, I mean, in terms of your involvement, I thought at the time the great thing within Burnham, and still is, I'm sure, but was our Kapa Haka group. If you want to talk about that, that'd be
we have our co-marshal who were there. That was Kuro Eric and Nan Katarina. They were the Henrys, and they were quite a moving force in Burnham at the time in terms of the cultural side of that. And we also had a really great Kapa Haka group that was our tamariki and our adults as well. And they actually played quite a significant part in the ceremonies on the day. So we had the kai karanga, that was myself and Nan, and we had our warriors who were to
which I think you've got some photographs of.
Got some great photos, yeah. And we also had our tamariki who were out there singing Waimata. Yeah, so it was pretty good introduction for the Queen to come in to camp.
So I think, I mean, the karanga which you sang, and I can still hear it today. It was incredibly emotional, and the significance, as we all know, it was particularly important for the Queen's visit because those of you who were involved in that, it really does reflect mana wahine, the power of women, and there was no other person who could reflect that better than Her Majesty the Queen.
Yeah.
So in terms of your feelings around that, you must have been incredibly honoured about it, to be able to participate in that.
Yeah, it was
play that role.
Quite nerve-wracking. So I'm not too sure if you recall, but Aroha was actually supposed to be kaikaranga to take the Queen into camp, but she was not able to do that 24 hours out. So it was a bit of a surprise.
But you certainly got the role, yes.
Great surprise, and as you do, you just step in and get the job done. But it was quite emotional on the day.
Very emotional. But you did a beautiful job. And obviously she was escorted in by the warriors. And then, as you say, the school, which the tamariki, and a lot of those kids, I mean, my two children, your children, I mean, Leah and Isaac, and in your case, your children.
Three of my boys.
Yeah, were all in that group. So it must have had an enormous impact on them for the rest of their lives, really. But I thought it was just such a powerful and emotional way to welcome Her Majesty.
Well, I think what it did show is, that, and through the guard, through the operational activities that were going on, or training for operations, the community. It was really good community spirit, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, very, very powerful. Incredibly powerful, some really leading people in all of that. And as you say, Eric, who's now passed away, and Katerina. Eric is our Kalmata, Katerina, his wife, were really instrumental in a sort of binding force within the camp. It was really very powerful. So if we sort of move on to, and you did mention that, I mean, these visits are really well planned, and as I said, a few months before the royal party had come through, and they were very accommodating in terms of the program, and our whole focus was involving the whole community. And I mean, what was your sense for the community around that when the visit was planned, when it was coming about, and when it actually took place?
Yeah, I think there was a definitely school community. So all of the local schools, they kind of descended on Burnham on the day. Also the community. I mean, a lot of people followed her from the city because she had a lot of activities, you know, hosted in the city as well. So yeah, I think Burnham Camp was quite a special one. It's quite formal. Yeah,
no, you're right. I mean, I'll sort of move on, if I may, to my part when I first met Her Majesty the Queen, and I've got a photograph here, which I'm not sure if that'll come up on the but I'm very fond of this photograph, and in the sense that it doesn't actually show my face or anybody else's, but it shows Her Majesty the Queen's face, and she's smiling, and again. I see in the photograph, I think you've got in your book there, of her and Sir Jerry Matterpry. Again, there's that beautiful smile. She was incredibly beautiful. If you want to describe how she looked that day, I think that would be really, really nice.
Yeah, so I agree. So I was quite close to her, just to her side, and just very petite, beautiful. Her face, I'm not sure if you looked at her face, but just clean lines.
Absolutely. So in terms of, I mean, she's smiling in both, and she looks comfortable in that photograph, and she looks incredibly happy in this photograph. And people always ask me, what did I say to her? But my sense is that actually she was just really happy with the whole occasion. And so at that point, we're marching towards the saluting dais for the Royal Guard, which was commanded by Brett Wellington, and he was just about to deploy to East Timor with NZ-6, and I remember as we got to the saluting dais, I looked back and I saw that the Duke of Edinburgh was talking to Sir Jerry Matterpry, who then was the Chief of Army, Major General Matterpry, and I said to Her Majesty, Your Majesty. I said, Your Majesty, should we wait for the royal party? And she looked at me and said, no, and immediately stepped up onto the saluting dais. And that was, I've been watching a lot of her coverage, obviously, recently, and a couple of times people have said, Your Majesty, would you consider doing this? No. And it was a lovely moment, and then she stepped up, and then obviously the Royal Guard was from soldiers who were just about to deploy in operations, you know, young men and women, with the army band accompanying and doing obviously the respective salutes. So that was the start of the visit, and then after that we then moved off to for lunch, and I suppose you then reconnected probably towards the end of the visit again when we went through a sort of a waiata from the school.
Yeah, I think, and just outside of your office and outside of the cinema is where the children, our local children from the Burnham school, you know, got to have a little bit more time with us. So that was quite special too, to close off with the, you know, with the tamariki.
Yeah, if I may, I'll just pass on to lunch very briefly. Purely because I've got some very personal reflections of Her Majesty from that, and that was that we sat. I had the honour of sitting next to her at a table, as you can imagine, for 45 minutes is a highlight of my life and my career. But it was the intimacy and her ability to just converse in a natural way. It wasn't. There was no sort of hierarchy around the table. It was just a very comfortable occasion, and I can remember the subject inevitably, because we were in New Zealand, focused in on rugby. in a very funny way, because sad and funny, poignant. I was just thinking about it the other day, was that her sister, Princess Margaret, had only just passed away.
That's right.
Only 3 weeks previously, and only 10 days previously had she been had they had their funeral service. And so, and what came through in the conversation was just her love for her sister. And so, you know, she would have been going through a period of mourning, obviously, but here she was, as usual, being incredibly beautiful and engaging. But she was talking about the fact that her sister, Princess Margaret, had been the colonel in chief of the regiment of the Royal Highland Fusiliers, which is a Scottish regiment. And the soldiers are all very short. In fact, that's where Billy Connolly's sort of part of the world.
Right.
They're all, well, not Billy in his case, but the soldiers are short, tough, and play football, or soccer as we call it. But she remarked that they just won the Army Rugby Cup because they'd recruited a company of Fijians. And so they'd won the rugby, and she just thought this was hilarious. And so it was that sort of, you know, the ability to talk at any level was her strength. And it was just a very beautiful moment. And then she talked about her daughter being as you know, she was really good at horse riding, and had actually won some had represented England, United Kingdom in the Olympic Games. But she then said that her daughter, Princess Anne's daughter, Sarah Phillips, was a much better horsewoman, but actually not quite as dedicated. But in fact, she then went on to win the silver medal at the 2012 London Olympics. So the Queen was very observant. But so that was a very intimate and a special time for us. And I remember, I'm not sure, we were talking about it before, that she'd signed the visitor's book when she came in.
She did.
In 1954, and we'd found the exact same table. And we posed it so that, you know, it's very difficult. You don't pose the Queen. You don't say, Your Majesty, can you just you know, move to the left, move to the right. So we just had to take that opportunity to say, would you please, Your Majesty, please sign this visitor's book. And then we got a photograph of her exactly, and the Duke of Edinburgh, in exactly the same position as they were all those years previously.
It's amazing. 20 years ago.
And then after that, she went to visit, she went to the camp cinema, which is what, as you were referring to, which was where all the battalion elements had put on static display. So she had a good 45 minutes talking very intimately with each of our groups of soldiers, from, you know, those who were in the medical, right through to logistics, to engineers, through to the infantry, and then women who were getting deployed. So that was a pretty special moment for them. And I was just talking to a couple the other day who still remember just having that opportunity, just to have a chat with the Queen.
Yeah, I've seen some of the photos from from some of the people who were there. You could just see it on their face.
Absolutely. So it's an incredibly proud day for us all, a proud moment. And then, as you say, we walked out of the cinema. I've got a photograph of me with Her Majesty. But actually, I've just seen in that photograph there's a picture of the Duke of Edinburgh as well. And of interest, we decided as part of the programme, the Duke, he would go and visit the limited services volunteers, the youth life skills, and also a group of what in those days were called intellectually handicapped people from Ashburton had come up to participate in some of the activities. And so that was great that, you know, you were getting this cross section. Diverse, yeah, absolutely. From our bicultural, the importance of the bicultural element, which we can talk about, right through to what we do as a military, which is not just focusing on operations in East Timor, but also support to youth and support to those who, you know, who don't have the same advantages as you and I and our children have. Yeah. So that was that, and then of course, bring in the choir again of the Tamariki. She was really interested. I remember having in that photograph chatting to her, and she was just really interested in the school children. And I think, you know, that was the beauty of Burnham and that whole location. That she would have left with the impression that it was one of community, wasn't it? Yeah,
definitely a sense of community and work. You know, I think work was all embracing. So you had all of your work elements, you had your community around you, and there are quite a lot of the community from the city as well.
They'd come out, yeah. So I suppose, you know, if you reflect, she and the Duke of Edinburgh, Her Majesty, would have touched the lives of so many people, but in such a beautiful way, in the sense that she just listened and also involved conversation in and around her own family.
Well, I think she was quite graceful, wasn't she?
Very graceful, yeah.
Just how she carried herself on the day. It was quite hot.
It was.
You know, so she was in
right.
full dress in her beautiful lined suit right the way through. I don't think I ever saw, perhaps at lunch, that she removed her headwear.
She would have done, I suppose. Yeah, absolutely.
But
yeah.
I think I recall right the way through.
Just
she had a jacket.
a sense of duty, wasn't it? Yeah, which then impacted on everybody else. I mean, I have to mention Mark Hunter as well, of course, who was my 4th Sergeant Major, and you know, there was a whole crew behind. So what I'd like to do now, if I may, is, and you were just looking at it this morning, which is this is a letter from her private secretary, which, if I may, I'll read it, because I think what it does is it just incorporates how important the visit was, how much detail had gone into the planning, how engaged Her Majesty and the Duke of Edinburgh were, but also just this whole element of respect, for those people who had put in all the work. So it's from the Royal Party on Tour Wellington, the 25th of February 2002, so pretty soon afterwards. And it says, as we flew back to Wellington from Christchurch this afternoon, the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh asked me to write and thank you, and through you all, those at Burnham Camp, for the warmth of their welcome this afternoon. It was a very special occasion, and all managed with the most professional and meticulous attention to detail. Could you pass on thanks to all those who made the visit possible, to those involved in the Māori welcome, the Burnham Cultural Group, to those members of the Royal Guard, to the chefs, waiters and waitresses, and band at lunchtime, to those involved in the Limited Services volunteer training, and to all those who were present at the camp cinema and who were able to explain to Her Majesty the work they do in the New Zealand Army. And could you pass on the Queen's gratitude to all those others who were based at Burnham who turned out across the camp to welcome her with waves and smiles. It was a very special day indeed. Her Majesty and His Royal Highness have asked me particularly to extend their thanks for the kind present of the scarf and cloak, which in more English weather than today, they will certainly use. Thank you again for your help and guidance over the last 6 months. Yours sincerely, Tim Hitchings, Assistant Private Secretary. So there you go.
That was a pretty good summary of the day, wasn't it?
It was. And so, you know, that takes a lot of planning and detail, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think if I looked for one word, it would be, that I saw on the day, it would be aroha.
Aroha.
Yeah, I think that would be it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, well, thanks for joining me this morning it's a very sad occasion, obviously, but also at the same time we draw a lot of strength, don't we? We draw a lot of strength from her service. She was an example to all of us. So thank you for your input on that day, and for everything you did, to be honest, for the Burnham community through you and the others in terms of the Māori Culture Group, the whole sense.